Once upon a time, in the red dust village of Umokoro, there lived a girl named Adisi, a girl who once believed her father would do anything to protect her. He used to call her Nwa Mama, meaning my good child. He used to carry her on his back during the market days. He used to sing to her when she had fever at night. But love is a fragile thing in the face of secrets. And the day Adesi turned 16, her father's love began to rot. "Adesi, my daughter," Obinna said with a smile, "you've grown into a woman. Very soon, you'll be in your husband's house." Adesi was shocked. She stared at her father, confused. She never expected him to say something like that, at least not at her age. It didn't feel like a joke, it felt serious. Later that day, she told her mother what her father had said. Ngozi smiled and waved her hand. "Don't mind him, he's just pulling your legs." But 1 month later, everything changed. They came for her early, before the dew had dried from the grass. They said she was lucky. They said her husband was powerful, that Chief Okem had chosen her out of all the girls in the village. Adesi stood still, completely shocked. She didn't know what to say or do. She never believed her father truly meant everything he was saying. At first, she thought of running away. Chief Okem was old enough to be her grandfather. The idea of marrying him made her stomach turn. But then she paused. Running away wouldn't end well. "I have to stay. I have to know what all this thing is about and where it is going to lead to." Right there and then, Adesi made a decision. She would stay, but she would not stay quiet. She had a plan. They dressed her up like a bride, but she felt like a sacrifice, and in many ways, that was exactly what she was. Her mother watched from the doorway, biting her bottom lip to stop herself from crying. She had begged Obinna, her husband, Adesi's father, to not do this, but the man would not listen. "You know what I stand to lose if I back down now?" he snapped. "That man holds things that could destroy me. Do you want your children to be fatherless by disgrace?" She didn't answer because deep down she feared it was already too late, even though she didn't understand what her husband was saying. No one knew what Adesi had overheard. No one saw her creeping behind the hut weeks ago, barefoot, listening to her father argue with Chief Okem in the dark. No one saw the way her hands shook when she had her name spoken like an object, a deal, a prize. "She's young and untouched. It will seal the deal," Chief Okem said, "and you will never speak of the shrine again." That was the night Adesi died on the inside. So on the day of the wedding, when they brought her to sit beside Chief Okem under the canopy, her eyes were empty. The drummers played, the elders smiled, her father gave a speech, and then Adesi started laughing. Not a shy laugh, not a joyful laugh, a wild, terrifying laugh that made even the children run. She fell to the ground, rolled in the dust, whispered strange words and clapped like a monkey. People screamed. The ceremony stopped immediately. The bride had gone mad, or so they thought. But her mother saw through it. She saw the look in her daughter's eyes. This wasn't madness. This was protection. This was strategy. That was the only way Adesi knew how to say no without being buried alive by family shame. After the wedding broke apart, people stopped coming to the house. The compound was quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that carried shame and fear. The kind that made people look at the ground when they passed by your gate. Adesi no longer spoke. She no longer smiled. She no longer responded to her name. She sat under the guava tree for hours, barefoot, hair loose, lips cracked, and eyes far away. Sometimes she clapped her hands and laughed for no reason. Other times she cried in the middle of the night, rolling in the dust. The villagers whispered, "She's mad. The chief has used her for ritual." While some said she had been touched by evil spirits. But her mother, Ngozi, didn't know what to believe. She sat every evening by the window, watching her daughter. Is this madness, or is Adesi hiding something? That night, Adesi's father Obinna couldn't sleep. He paced the room, sweating, shaking, whispering to himself. He remembered how she screamed during the wedding, how she looked straight into his eyes and shouted words that made his heart stop. "The gods saw what you and Chief Okem did." She said it clearly, loudly in front of everyone. What did she mean? Obinna knew the secret he carried, a terrible one. something from many years ago, and now his daughter was saying things she had no business knowing. Flashback to many years ago, Obinna stood outside a small hut in the dark, watching the widow Uloma sleeping with her baby beside her. He had already done the unthinkable. He had helped poison her husband, Chijioke, because he wanted Uloma for himself. "It is done," Chief Okem said. "Now you can chase the wife freely." Obinna didn't reply. He smiled lightly. Weeks passed. Obinna visited the widow Uloma. He brought yam, salt, money. He called it help, but it wasn't help. It was hunger. He wanted her badly, more than he had ever wanted anything, even his wife. But Uloma refused him. Even in pain, she stood strong. "My husband just died. Leave my house." Obinna felt shame and anger, but she refused him over and over, until one night he forced himself inside Uloma's house. Uloma screamed. She tried to fight even while trying to protect her little child, but Obinna was stronger than the both of them. She hit her head on the wall. The child kicked once and then went still. Both of them died before morning. Obinna had buried it deep, gave land to Chief Okem to stay silent, pretended to be innocent, and now his daughter, his blood, was acting like she knew. Back in the present, Obinna opened the window and saw Adisi in the moonlight. She was sitting on the ground, drawing something in the dust. He walked slowly towards her. She didn't look up, she just kept drawing. When he got closer, he looked down and saw what it was. A figure of a man standing over a woman lying on the ground, a small child beside her. He gasped. Adisi turned slowly. Her eyes were calm, and then she laughed. Loud, mad, and wild laughter. Obinna stepped back, shaking. He couldn't breathe. Back in the house, Ngozi tried to feed Adisi. She sat by her side, gently spooning food into her mouth. "My daughter, please eat. Say something." Adisi just stared ahead, and then she whispered softly, "If I talk, someone will die." Ngozi dropped the spoon. "What did you say?" But Adisi had already crawled into the corner, hugging her knees, and started laughing again. Ngozi stood there frozen. Tears filled her eyes and she touched her chest. God, what is happening in this house? Later that night, Obinna had a nightmare. He saw Uloma in a white cloth holding a dead child. She pointed at him. He woke up screaming, his heart pounding. He walked outside again and saw Adisi staring at him, not smiling, not laughing, just watching, quiet, still, and dangerous. 3 weeks had passed since Adisi's wedding fell apart, and still she spoke to no one. Still she walked like someone lost in another world. Still she laughed at nothing and screamed at midnight. But something was changing, not in Adisi, but in her mother. Ngozi was watching more closely now, paying attention to details. And one evening, after Adisi had fallen asleep on the veranda, Ngozi sat beside her husband and asked quietly, "Obinna, I want to ask you something and I want you to tell me the truth." Obinna looked up, his hands shaking slightly. "What is it?" he asked. Ngozi's voice was calm. "Is there anything I should know that you are hiding from me?" Obinna's face went pale. "What kind of question is that?" he said, but his voice cracked. His hands trembled as he reached for his cup of palm wine. Obinna stayed silent. "And now," Ngozi continued, "our daughter is drawing pictures of a woman and a baby. She is whispering strange things at night. She said if she talks, someone will die." "Who, Obinna? Who will die if she talks?" Obinna stood up and walked away, breathing heavily. Ngozi sat still. That night, she couldn't sleep because something in her spirit made her realize that Adisi was not mad. Instead, she remembered something. The next morning, while folding Adisi's wrapper, Ngozi noticed something tucked into the small inner pocket of her daughter's old school bag. It was a piece of cloth, dated, stained, and written around a paper. The cloth looked familiar. It had a name stitched to the edge, Uloma. Ngozi's hand shook as she unfolded the paper. It was a torn page from a notebook with the words scribbled in Adisi's handwriting. "I saw Papa that night. He was digging in the banana grove. He didn't know I followed him. I saw him bury something. I don't know what it was, but I think it belonged to the woman who died." Ngozi dropped the notes and her heart pounded like a drum. Dear God, my child knows something. That evening, Obinna drank more than usual. He sat outside alone, staring at the darkness. His eyes were red, his body shaking. He remembered it all too clearly now. Oloma's scream, the blood, the baby's tiny foot twitching before it went still. He had thought it was buried forever, but now it was waking up. Later that week, the village catechist visited to pray for Adisi. He sprinkled holy water, sang hymns, and even laid hands on her. Adisi stared at him for a long time. Then she stood up, slowly walked towards her father, and said her full first sentence in this: "If you touch me again, Papa, I will dig up what you buried." The whole compound went silent. Ngozi gasped. Obinna's drink slipped from his hand and shattered on the ground. "What did you just say?" he asked. Adisi blinked, then fell to the floor, laughing like a mad person again, rolling, screaming, spitting. People shouted, but Ngozi didn't move because she heard it clearly. Her daughter had just threatened her husband with something real, something buried. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Ngozi lit a lantern and walked quietly towards the banana grove behind the shrine. She took a hoe with her. Her hands trembled as she dug into the red soil. In the third scoop, she hit something hard. She dug faster. Soon, she found a small wrapped bundle, old, rotten clothes, bones, and a necklace, and a baby's slippers. She covered her mouth to keep her from screaming. Then she stood up and walked home. Her daughter was not mad. Her husband was not innocent, and the time to expose everything had finally come. The next morning, the sun rose quietly over Umokoro village, but the air was heavy. Ngozi sat in the middle of the compound, her wrapper tied tightly around her chest. Her hands were folded, her eyes looked calm, but her soul was on fire. Adisi sat beside her, still in silence, staring at the sky as always. Obinna came out of the house, adjusting his belt. "What's going on?" he asked. Ngozi looked at him and replied softly, "We are waiting." "Waiting for what?" Ngozi didn't answer that. But not long after, the village gong sounded. "Gong, bang, bang." Then came the voice of the town crier. "Let all the elders and the men of honor gather at Obinna's compound. There is a matter of blood and shame to be revealed." Obinna froze. His knees weakened. He looked at Ngozi. She still didn't blink. "Ngozi, what have you done?" "I gave the land what it asked for, and now it has spoken." By midday, the compound was full. Elders, youths, women, even Chief Okem had arrived, wearing his red cap and forced confidence. They sat in a circle. Obinna stood, sweating and shaking, breathing heavily. Ngozi stepped forward and held up the clothes she had dug up. "My people, 17 years ago," Ngozi began, "a widow named Oloma and her child died mysteriously." The crowd murmured. "We were told it was a spiritual attack, but it was not." She unwrapped the clothes slowly and showed them the tiny slipper, the one with Obim stitched on it. Gasps filled the air. Chief Okem tried to stand. "This is nonsense," he barked. But then Adisi stood up. For the first time in weeks, her body was straight, her voice was firm, and her madness was gone. She looked at Chief Okem and said, "You came to marry me, thinking you could have me like you helped destroy her. I saw you that night, both of you, in the mango grove. My father was digging and you were holding a lantern. You killed her husband because my father wanted Oloma. Then my father forced himself on her, and when she refused, she bled, the baby died, she died, and you buried her like an animal." The compound erupted with murmurs, shouts, screams, women covering their mouths. Chief Okem tried to run, but the youths blocked him. Obinna dropped to his knees. Sweat poured from his face. His chest rose and fell like a man gasping for air. "Adisi, please, don't." But she stared at him and said coldly, "You were ready to sell me to keep your secret safe." By evening, the community had made their judgment. Chief Okem was stripped of his title. Obinna was banished from the village, his lands taken, his name erased from the family lineage. As he was dragged out of the compound, he looked back at Ngozi and Adisi. "You have destroyed me," he said. Ngozi replied, "You destroyed yourself the day you touched a woman who said no." Adisi turned away. She didn't cry. She had done enough of that. Weeks later, Adisi stood under the same tree where she once sat, laughing like a mad girl. This time, she wore clean clothes. Her hair was neat. Her back was straight. Children passed and greeted her with respect. A woman from the village said, "That girl has been through fire and she didn't burn." Ngozi came outside smiling. "The world now sees you, my daughter, not as a mad girl, but as the one who refused to be silenced." And Adisi said softly, "I only did what Oloma's spirit asked of me, to speak." The moral lesson of this story lets us know that Adesi's story reminds us that silence is not always weakness, and madness is not always madness. Sometimes, what we call madness is a shield, a way to survive in a world that refuses to listen to truth. This story teaches us that forcing young girls into marriage, especially for selfish gain, is not tradition, it is betrayal. No child should be treated like a property. Every child deserves protection, not sacrifice. It also reminds us that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, will always rise. A crime covered in silence will one day speak through the voice of the innocent. As teachers, as leaders, as a society, we must learn to listen, to protect the weak, to face the truth no matter how shameful it is, because when justice sleeps, pain wakes up in another generation. Let us raise children who will not be afraid of when they grow up and begin to speak.